Assalamualaikum and hi, we are from Group 14. We will be presenting the case of Fixers Construction Sdn Bhd against K&E Design Ideas Sdn Bhd and another decided in 2024. This case mainly deals with the legal principles on lifting or piercing the corporate veil. Briefly, the plaintiff Fixers Construction appointed the first defendant as its contractor on 15 July 2020 for an upgrading construction project in Kuala Pilah, Negeri Sembilan. During the project, the plaintiff made several advance payments to the first defendant. Later, the plaintiff claimed that the amount paid was more than the work actually done, which led to an alleged overpayment of about 1.58 million. The plaintiff also said that the work carried out was defective, incomplete and did not follow the agreed specifications even though notice had been given to fix the problems. The second defendant is a director and a shareholder of the first defendant. The plaintiff alleged that he had strong control over the company and made promises and assurances that influenced the plaintiff to give projects to the first defendant and to continue making advance payments. The plaintiff also claimed that the second defendant agreed to give a personal guarantee but did not do so. Because of this, the plaintiff asked the court to pierce the corporate veil and hold the second defendant personally responsible. However, the second defendant denied any personal liability and applied to strike out the claim under Order 18 Rule 19 of the Rules of Court 2012. The main legal issue before the court was whether the plaintiff's claim against the second defendant disclosed a sustainable cause of action that justified lifting or piercing the corporate veil. The court also considered whether the second defendant had made representations or assurance regarding the completion of the project within the agreed time frame, whether such assurance induced the plaintiff to make repeated advance payments, and whether the second defendant had assured that any excess payments would be refunded.
Assalamualaikum to Prof. Hasani. My name is Nurwardiha binti Asri and I'm going to be presenting the applicable legal principle. We're going to start with doctrine of separate legal entity, which this is originated from the case of Salomon and Salomon, where the principle stated that once the company is incorporated, it has separate legal personality. And this doctrine is recognized in Malaysia under Company Act 2016, which Section 20 mentioned that company incorporated under this act has separate legal personality from its member, and Section 21 said that company has legal capacity to conduct business on its own name. And we're going to move on to the corporate veil, where the separation between the company and the member is we call corporate veil. And this corporate veil protects shareholder and director from being personally liable, but this corporate veil can be lifted by the court. So thus corporate veil is not absolute. The judge has made reference to three cases in deciding when lifting corporate veil is justified. For the first case that the judge referred to is in the case of Solid Investment and Alcatel Lucas Malaysia Sdn Bhd, where in this case it is highlight that corporate veil cannot be disregarded or lifted purely on the ground that it is for interest of justice just because it is fair to do so. No, cannot. But it must establish evidence of actual fraud or conduct amounting to fraud in equity. The second case that court referred to is Gurbajan Singh and Velasamy, which in this case said that the corporate veil may be lifted if the corporation is established for fraudulent purpose or to avoid existing obligation. What constitutes fraudulent purpose is an actual fraud or fraud in equity. And the case that refers to fraud in equity is when the separate legal entity is used for individual to escape their contractual obligations. And this Gurbajan Singh cited another case of Takakus Singh, which for the corporate veil to be lifted, it requires special circumstances that show that company is a mere facade concealing true facts. The third cases that the judge has referred to is in the case of Ong Leong and Keller, which this case is aligned with the principle fraud unravel all. Court can disregard the corporate personality when the company is used as a vehicle for fraud, and the court can hold that wrongdoer personally liable and accountable. This is because when a company is used as a vehicle for fraud or for fraudulent purpose, it undermines the principle of separate legal personality as it no longer serves the intended purpose. And the judge has also referred to the case of Press, where it says that the nature of the wrongdoing must be examined critically before regarding this corporate personality, which involve two principles, concealment and evasion principle. Principle which this permit the court to look behind the corporate structure to ascertain the true fact where a company is used to conceal the identity of action of individuals behind the company. And we have evasion principle, which this principle allow court to pierce the corporate veil when a person use a company to evade an existing legal obligation. But the test require the court to show that a legal right exists against the controller of a company and that a company is deliberately interposed to evade the enforcement. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Next, I will be presenting the court decision based on the issue and legal principle. The High Court considered whether the plaintiff claims against the second defendant, a director and shareholder of the first defendant, should be struck out under Order 18, Rule 19, Rules of Court 2012. The court reaffirmed the doctrine of separate legal personality under Section 20 and 21 of the Company Act 2016. Directors are not personally liable for a company contractual obligation merely due to control or involvement. The corporate veil may only be lifted in exceptional circumstances, namely actual fraud or fraud iniquity, which is seen in the case of Solid Investment versus Alcatel-Lucent. Use of a company to evade existing legal obligation based on the case of Gurbachan Singh versus Velasamy, and lastly is the application of concealment or evasion principles, which is based on the case Ong Liu Chiu versus Keller. Next is the court decision based on the court's finding. The plaintiff failed to plead any fraud, concealment, or evasion justifying veil piercing. The plaintiff admitted the first defendant performed the works, indicating a breach of contract, not fraud. Allegation that the second defendant was the alter ego was insufficient in law, and no personal guarantee was executed and no independent liability arose. Advance payment and internal management issues were commercial matters, not fraud. And lastly, the decision is the claim against the second defendant struck out with cause. Claim against the first defendant proceed to trial.
My name is RABIATUL BINTI FARYZAN. So I will continue to student commentary, which is the critical analysis. For some people, maybe the court decision was rigid in its interpretation of veil lifting, but this view of the law may lead to an unfair result for parties who have contracted with companies but have to suffer the damages due to the misdeed or management. In our opinion, the decision in this case is more likely to have a significant impact on the future application of the lifting corporate veil in Malaysia by reaffirming that veil lifting is confined to narrowly defined circumstances involving fraud or the evasion of an existing legal obligation. The court reinforced a highly restrictive and predictable approach to the doctrine. So as a result, future litigants seeking to lift the corporate veil will be required to plead and prove specific facts demonstrating fraudulent intent or evasion, rather than relying on the argument or control or influence or fairness. So we move to conclusion for this case. This case upheld consistent application for the corporate veil and continued to support the doctrine of separate legal entities. The personal liabilities of directors or shareholder will not apply unless there was a proof of fraud, an equitable claim for fraud, or a direct effort by the director to evade an existing legal obligation. So the court established a clear limit on judicial intervention against corporate through the principle of lifting the corporate veil. So that's all from our group. Thank you for listening.